Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome back, Peter. Happy Wednesday. I got
sort of happy.
Yeah, sort of happy. Well, you're trying to get to happy by the end of the episode.
Aggravating Wednesday, apparently. No, totally. Today is.
Maybe we'll be able to get you to happy by the end of the episode. Got this video from Jim Rohn, so we'll see what you think.
It's all risky. The minute you were born, it got risky.
That's a weird looking smile
If you think trying is risky, wait till they hand you the bill for not trying.
Oh, he's a little creepy to me.
If you think investing is risky, wait till you get the tab for not investing.
He's not
See,
wrong,
risky.
but I just wish he wasn't so creepy.
Having children is risky. Going into business is risky.
Damn,
Investing
dude.
your money is risky. It's all risky.
Woof.
I'll tell you how risky life
All right,
is.
I can't watch anymore. The guy's making the hair on my arm stand up.
That's the end of the video anyway, so you're good.
Yeah. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's saying the cost of not taking action is way greater than the cost of taking action and having something go wrong.
Yeah.
He's not wrong about that.
Yeah.
But does anybody else feel completely skeeved out by this guy? I mean, that weird look, that weird smile, his tonal, his vocal patterns.
It was an interesting style that he was
What year is
deploying.
this video from?
I'm going to guess, I don't know, but I'm going to guess it's 60s because, I know he was very influential on Tony Robbins.
That is a weird dude to me. Yeah. Like, I can't receive my information from someone who smiles like a serial killer. Well, that's what he reminded me of.
Yeah, well, this goes into the communication component, that it's not, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
Can you just play that bit,
sure.
that bit again about him with that weird smile?
Yeah, here you go.
It's all risky.
Oh, that right there. God damn. Wait, keep it going, because
sure,
I'd rather just bust his chops a bit.
The minute you were born, it got risky.
Ugh.
If you think trying is risky, wait till they hand you the bill for not trying.
Smile. What is that?
If you think investing is
that's
risky,
weird.
wait till you get the tab for not investing. See, it's all risky. Getting married is risky. Having children is risky.
Can't even.
Going into business is risky.
It's like a train wreck for me. The eyes are like bulging out of his head. End it, please. I can't even.
You're not going to get out alive.
I have to go vomit.
No, it's definitely an interesting take. I agree. Yeah. All right. Well, moving on from Jim Rohn at a full speed. We usually do a tweet, but this is a quote from Michael Rogoff. Property management emerged as this industry where if you were mediocre and you didn't steal from your clients, you were terrific. It's now who can provide the most service.
Well, thankfully, who can provide the most service? Property management, of all the areas in real estate, it's like the lowest barrier to entry. There's a billion property managers. They all suck. The reason why I have my own property management company is I can do it better than everybody. It's not that hard. I'm not trying to brag or anything. And the reason it's not that hard is all you have to do is care. The reason I care is that I self-manage all of my own properties. So I created a separate property management entity. I hired people through that entity. We collect management fees from all of my properties. And it's a functioning business, separate from my ownership of the properties. And George, the reason why I decided to do that a long time ago is that I tried all the third-party property management options that were available. I tried everybody in my markets. I called everybody. I met with everybody. I tried everybody. I looked at all the agreements. I hired some. I fired more. I hired some new ones. They all suck. And the reason they all suck, one, it's very low barrier to entry business. So you have a lot of unscrupulous, lazy, ridiculous people. And you can't just hand your asset off to people that are inexperienced and aren't motivated. And there's no money in property management. It's like a loss leader. I can do it for my own buildings because I don't make a profit doing it. But as a third party property manager, you're looking to make a profit. You want to bill your properties enough so that you can actually make money doing property management. It's just a ripoff. So I always felt I could do it better, and I do. And it was always non-economical. for me to hire someone else to manage something, which really is my asset. I should know how to manage it, and I should do it better than anyone. So I never understood why people were rushing to get into the property management business. There's no money in it. And when there's no money in something, they have to look for ways to get the money. So they overbill you, they overcharge you, they charge you for repairs and maintenance. The plumber will come charge $100, but they'll bill you $350. The list goes on and on and on. It is stealing. All of these guys do that stuff, all these low-level property management companies. I'm so happy that now people are catching on to the fact that, oh, I need my property manager to be exemplary, to be reputable, to have experience, to know many facets of my industry, including legal, financial, local municipal codes and laws, like all this stuff that before all the cheap property managers, like they never knew that. And now there's a higher bar being set. I hope that continues, and I hope it flushes out a lot of the inexperienced, low-quality service providers, and we get back to running real businesses that are connected to real assets and real property owners. That's the best thing for everybody. But property management, George, forever, low barrier to entry, anybody could jump in, and you just got stolen from every day of the week, and it made 0 sense. So for those people out there that are building their portfolios and building their presence in owning real estate, self-manage. Like if you own assets all over the world, all over the country in multiple different locations and markets, it's going to be really tough. But if you have assets that are close to you, you know how I feel about that. Stay close to your asset. If you're building up your portfolio regionally, locally, near where your office is, you can self-manage those. You can put together management teams and infrastructure to handle all of that stuff. You have to go with third-party property management when you're scattered all over the place, and a lot of the bigger guys are. They're scattered all over the country, all 4 corners of the country and in the middle too. They need third-party management services. But when you have to choose a third-party manager, make sure you're choosing someone reputable. Maybe they want to co-invest in the property and be a partner in the equity with the property. That way, your interests are aligned. If you just have the owner hiring a third-party property manager, there's no alignment of interests other than the property manager saying, well, what's the bill I can send my property owner? When that's the case, you're not aligned. It's never a good result. It's never a good relationship. George, I want to be aligned with people that I do business with, especially in the owner-manager relationship. So for me, I'm aligned because I'm the owner and I'm the manager, and I'm creating the most amount of value for the ownership interest in the property. And it's the best way to go. I highly recommend not using a third-party manager unless you're so scattered in multiple markets that you have no choice. But up your bar, up your standards, and make sure that you're hiring the best of the best. Don't seek to cheap out on fees because they're only going to back bill you when you'll see it when you read the agreements. They're going to back bill you for time spent, for plumbing repairs, for electricity repairs. They're going to upcharge you. They're not going to add a flat fee or a 10% upcharge. They're going to figure out ways to dive into your pocket every which way. I promise you, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. What a reaction. That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, great. We'll see you over at the table.
Thanks, George.
Thank you. All right, Peter, welcome back to the table.
I'm thrilled. I am.
That's good. That's good. We're getting closer to happy as we move along.
Yeah. Being with you makes me happy.
That's good. I'm glad.
I admit that when I walked in here, I was not that happy.
Yeah.
And that video we just watched really wasn't great. It creeped me out.
Yeah. We're having nightmares about Jim Rohn tonight. Yeah. So this might not make you happy, or what we're about to talk about to open up, but tax break 421A. We actually touched on this a couple weeks ago, but even as Governor Hochul has pitched various reforms of the tax break, there's some in the real estate industry, they're saying we're not going to see something like this again for, like till 2026, I think is some predictions.
Okay.
What is the 421A tax break, just for those that don't know? And what do you think its absence will mean for New York City? And how do you personally prepare for something like this?
So the 421A is one of the many incentives that New York City enacted to motivate and lubricate and incentivize developers to come in and take risk and build. It worked great. It's a property tax exemption that the property developer gets in exchange for allocating a certain amount of units as affordable in the development that's being built. And it worked great. It allowed developers to come in. They'd have a product after they were finished building that they could sell to the consumer. There'd be property tax free for a certain period of time. It really lubricated the developer's ability to sell the units because as a buyer, you could go in and look at condo units and say, all right, what are the HOA fees and what are the property taxes? And the HOA fees would be whatever they are. And the property taxes would be like $7. It's great, right? Who wouldn't want to buy a home where there was little to no property taxes? Now, those expire at some point. And then when that property tax benefit expires, you're then paying full VIG on your property taxes. And then that affects the market and the value accordingly. Because ideally, there's more people that would rather purchase a property tax exempt 421A condo than one that has high property taxes. So it's a great marketing tool. It's a great sales tool. So I've also heard that the governor's plan doesn't include the 421A, but I'm also hearing that she's proposing something that's really, really similar and just calling it something else for marketing purposes or political capital purposes or whatever, which I completely believe. But New York needs it. All these cities need to look at ways to motivate and incentivize developers to come in, get the crap kicked out of them, take a lot of risk, and build something that really results in ratables for the city. But they have to build to make profit. And I'm not talking about 10 or 20% profit. Like, to go ground up in the middle of a city, right? It's no easy task.
Yeah.
Like, it's really complicated. It's really hard. That's why there's only a small few that can do it. And they should make a lot of money when they do. If they do it well, they should make a lot of money because it's tough and the city needs it. I mean, they're solving a problem that the city needs. They're building housing. They're building offices. They're building. I mean, cities don't build. They're not builders. They're not developers. We've said that 100 times. So cities and towns need private sector investment. They need these developers and these entrepreneurs to come in and build. That's how cities get built, is from private people doing it. So it's important to motivate that machine and lubricate that machine. The 421A is one of these long-standing mechanisms. It's been under attack. I mean, some people feel it's been abused. Some people feel it's they shouldn't have it anymore, and we're giving it away. And why give it away? It's New York. People are still going to come and build. Let me tell you, people are not going to still come and build in the absence of these economic incentives. You need these incentives. It's impossible to do business. And when you don't have these incentives, now it's economically just, I wouldn't want to do it. You need to try and lubricate the system. 421A does that. And I hope that it continues in either the same name or some new name or whatever form that she's going to propose. But I hope it continues.
Is there something that property owners can do to prepare for that, or is it just kind of hold on?
Well, there's a rush.
And
I mean,
figure it out?
People, what they can do, what they've been doing is rushing to get their permits in and approved right now before the end of the year, before it expires.
Right, yeah.
So there's all these new applications for permits and all these new projects. We're rushing, hiring expediters, lawyers to push it through the system really quickly without delay so that they could get the benefit of the 421A before the clock ticks out on them.
Yeah.
And then if it picks up again, it'll be sometime next year or whenever it's going to be. But we don't know. It may not. It may not come back next year. It may get killed in the Senate or the House or the the state Congress or whatever. You can keep an eye on it, and when there's these incentives and these economic policy points that are beneficial for developers, you got to track and follow that stuff.
You got to act. Right.
Yeah, you got to act. I mean, that dictates a lot. It's not only the 420 there's a lot of these things that happen. And as a developer in your town, your job is to know what they are and what the fine print says about all of them.
Real Deal reports that Extel Development is offering a rate rewind program at 1 Manhattan Square on the Lower East Side, Brooklyn Point in downtown Brooklyn. What is a rate rewind, and what are your thoughts on this strategy to incentivize potential buyers?
So we just talked about economic incentives and policies that a city can offer to developers to get developers to come in and build. Now the developer comes in and build, the market goes to shit, interest rates spike. That's like right now. Right. We all know that. Yeah. Now the developer who has their 421A, let's say, or not, but it doesn't matter. But we're talking about incentives.
Yep.
They have to sell units. They have to sell their real estate.
Right.
The interest rate environment is preventing that from happening. So a rate rewind is a tool that a developer can use to incentivize a buyer to come in and get a mortgage at the higher rate and still buy the condo or the piece of real estate. But the developer says, all right, if you can get a 7% mortgage, I know that's really high, I'll rate rewind your 7% down to 4.5% or 5% for the first 2 or 3 or 4 years to incentivize you to come in and do this deal. So even though mortgage rates are high, I'll pick up the top 2 or 2.5%. I'm just giving examples. It could be anything of what your new mortgage is, and then maybe that'll get you to want to come in and sign up this deal and put your deposit down and close.
Totally.
So everyone's got to incentivize everyone. The city's got to incentivize the developers. The developers have to market to and incentivize the buyers. If it's a hot market, there is no incentive to buyers.
Right.
If it's not a hot market like right now, you got to figure out ways to get the buyers in. People say, well, why not just lower the price? You don't want to lower the price. The city doesn't want you to lower the price, and that might actually be one of the terms and conditions in the 421A that you got, because the higher the price, the higher the rateable ultimately when the city gets its tax dollars, because it's based on value. And the developer doesn't want to show low values when they start selling through their inventory. They want to comp high. They want to show closed transactions at the highest possible price. So the developer is going to want to keep the price high, transact high, contract rate at a high rate, and have a buyer come in and buy at the high rate, and then offer other creative ways to incentivize the buyer to close that deal and get money back to the buyer other than lowering the price. We don't want to lower the price. In the rental business, we don't want to lower the contract rent. We want to use other incentives like free months or gift cards or signing bonuses, but you want to keep the contract rent high. If you're a developer and you're selling condos and the market's not very strong like it is right now, you have to get creative and find ways to continue to sell your units successfully and quickly and ride out the poor market condition, but you don't want to lower the price. As soon as you start lowering the price, you start creating a recorded trail, a documentable, reviewable trail of price history. And that's going to dictate so much, because imagine if you've got 200 or 300 or 500 units, whatever it is that you're trying to sell through, and you start recording the prices at low amounts, and then the next person comes in, the market starts to change. What's the next person going to want to do? They're going to want a similar price, because that's the comp, right? You're setting the comp. So you want to set the comps high. Keep the contract prices high, keep the closed prices high, and try and funnel money back to your buyer in some other way. You can do a rate rewind. You can have all sorts of other incentives. I mean, hell, you can hand them a duffel bag full of cash or so. I don't know. Like, people do anything.
Yeah.
But like in a market like this, it's like, please come in and buy my condo. Please come in, give me a deposit, sign a contract at a high price, and close.
Yeah.
Don't cancel, right? There's all these things. So the way you do that is you get creative. The rate rewind is one of those ways. We're in a high interest rate environment right now. Buyers of homes, buyers of condos need assistance, right? The interest rates were 3.5%, 4%. And all of a sudden, 4 months later, they're 7%.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Actually, this conversation is very similar to the one we had at the beginning of pandemic, even though the market conditions were very different, but the same kind of ethos of, don't lower prices, because that, you need to be careful of those comps.
Oh, that's the holy grail of what not to do in real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't lower the price. Figure out another way.
Yeah.
Just keep the prices high, because it sets the comp, it sets the standard, it sets the precedent. Once you start dropping prices, you're dead in the water, man.
Yeah, so just so interesting that, both completely different markets, but the exact same kind of goal.
Well, think about it. What would you do if you were looking for a home and it was $500,000 and interest rates, having risen as much as they have now, prevent you from buying that home?
Right.
And man, wouldn't it be great if interest rates weren't high and they were sort of back to where they were 4, 5, 6 months ago?
That would be great.
Right? You would have an easier time buying. So the developer is going to try and help you get through that purchase by assisting with some amount of finite concessions.
Got it.
So the rate rewind, they'll pick up a portion of the high interest rates. They'll figure out what that amounts to, what that enumerates to in terms of dollars, and they'll give it back to you at closing as a buyer credit. There's ways to skin this cat, but you don't want to drop the purchase price, because the next person that comes in to buy after you is going to use your closed sale as the comp for them to go get financing. They're going to use your closed sale as the comp for their decision to buy or not buy. Like, one thing you want to never do is you don't want to be like the highest. Like, look, it's happened to all of us, and sometimes it works out depending on which way the tides are going in the market. But like, you never want to be the guy that pays the most.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, paying the same thing that everybody else paid, or you're probably a lot better paying a little less than what everybody else paid. And if things really go crazy, then I'm sure you're really happy paying a whole lot less, like in a massive market downturn or a bankruptcy or something crazy. Mm-hmm. You never want to pay more than everybody else paid.
Absolutely, yeah.
As a developer, you never want to drop the price and lower the price. So keep the contract price high, keep the closed price high. The closed price is the price that the deal closes and transacts at, and which also gets recorded at the county courthouse. Keep that price high so that everyone after this buyer who looks to see what stuff's selling for, they see the high price.
Got it.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah. Read Business Online did a report saying that there was $205 billion cost impact on construction due to delayed payments. And they made this kind of unsurprising observation that timely, reliable payments become even more important in an inflationary environment. So that kind of just made me wonder what systems are needed in order to get people paid quickly.
Are we talking about when contractors bill a developer and it just takes a minute to get the payment done? Or are we talking about a developer that's like avoiding paying? Like, what are we talking about?
I think it sounds like it was months delay of pay. So I don't know. They didn't go into intent whether or not it was because they were avoiding it or not.
So let's assume that you've got all the parties involved in this discussion behaving properly and acting fairly. So there's no intentional delay of payment. So in my business, when a contractor presents an invoice to me for payment, I can't just like write a check that day at my desk in my office.
Right.
Like those days are gone. Everything's done electronically, bank wire. It has to get processed. When I get an invoice, George, I have to send my team, my project managers and other people, facilities people, to go over to the site to inspect. I got to make sure that what they're billing me for has actually been done and those materials are in my property and in my real estate, adding value to my property, and that it's in accordance with the terms and conditions of my contract with them, that it's all completed in a workmanlike manner, that it's done properly, that they didn't break anything or dent or scratch, like all this stuff. So we go over and inspect when we get presented with an invoice. If everything checks out, we do an approval of the payment request, and then it goes into the accounting department. And we pay bills either once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on the flow of things. But usually utility bills and things like that are once a month. But contractor payments get processed, and it has to go through the accounting department. That takes a couple days. They have to sign off on it. They have to review the contract. They have to make sure there's no overpayment being requested. They have to compare it to all the previous payments and check the balance due, like all this stuff, because no one gets it right. Contractors, notoriously, they're great at building stuff. They're great at the trades. They're not great at business, and they're not great at invoicing. Yeah. No offense to my contractor friends. But look, we have to make sure it's right.
Right.
Takes a couple of days, and then we send out a payment, either ACH or a bank wire. It takes few days. If it's an e-check, which is often, it can take up to 7 business days. So, maybe it's like 2 weeks for someone to get paid at our office. I mean, it just doesn't happen instantly. It's not like I can pull out my phone and Venmo you $30,000 if you're a roofer and you're like, it just doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that creates an issue for the contractor, because in my case, it takes 2 weeks. You can imagine with large companies, it might take 30 days. And that's when phrases like net 30 come into our business vocabulary, because there is an amount of time that it takes for money to transfer from the person who's sending the invoice to the person who's paying the invoice. You can imagine that with big companies, it might take even longer. It might take 60 days. That puts the contractor in a position of what to do in that 2 weeks, 30 days, or 60 days until they get the money, because they still have to pay their staff, their labor. They have to pay for the materials. So when you hire a contractor, you want to hire someone that's got financial wherewithal. You don't want to hire like a broke-ass contractor, because they're not going to be able to float your deal. They're not going to be able to perform. Like it takes performance. Like as a contractor, you want to get paid, but you're obligated to perform. And it's not just about building the house or renovating the roof or putting the addition on. Like it's not just about the physical work. Performing means that you have to be able to float and like not leave my job to go do 4 other jobs so you can get money to then come back to mine late. Now you're late on mine because you left because you couldn't hang for the 10 days or 2 weeks or 30 days. So contractors have to have the financial wherewithal to float a job. They have to be able to afford to perform. So it's a two-way street. It's not just like, here, I put your roof on, here's the invoice, pay me right now. Like that is not how the industry works. So I can for sure understand why contractors experience lag and drag and loss factor, because while they're waiting for the money to transfer from the property owner to them, they still have to pay their labor, so they still have to pay the insurance on their trucks, like all of that stuff. So there's probably a lot of excess drag and lag in those types of items. And I think what I'd like to see from the contractor community is know the economics of your business. Again, a lot of you guys aren't great business people. You have to have reserves. You have to be able to have cash flow and be able to float your payroll until you get paid from your clients. You also have to choose your clients really, really well. A lot of you guys out there are choosing anybody to work with, and you don't know how good or viable they are as a client to be able to pay you on time and in the right amount without hassle, right? I mean, it's like any relationship. The contractor property owner relationship should be very simple. The property owner wants a fair, good, safe, clean job and in the agreed amount of time, and the contractor wants to get paid quickly and get out of there and get on to the next thing, right? They don't want to hang out and linger. So both parties have to work together to figure that out. But nothing happens overnight. So if you're a contractor looking for on-demand, on-the-moment payment, you got to figure that out. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get that many jobs if you're putting that kind of stress on your property owner. There's a process. Let the property owner go through their process. It shouldn't be more than a few days. It shouldn't be more than a couple of weeks. The bigger the company, the longer the time. But you got to figure it out. You got to know who your property owner is and know who your customer is.
So with deal volume at a low point in the multifamily space, it reminded me
It's low.
It reminded me one of your first videos about knowing it's sometimes the best play is to do nothing. That was what you said in that video.
Yeah.
And
I've done nothing over the past year and a half.
Yeah, I was thinking like when move fast and break things is kind of the popular phrase nowadays, how is stillness a strategy in this moment right now?
If you've bought in the past year and a half, God bless. In multifamily, in value-add multifamily especially, and the Class A stuff. I don't know. I know people that have been buying that stuff. I don't envy them.
Right.
And I'm glad that I chose not to. I mean, I can only buy when I think the market conditions are right, when I think the numbers are right, when I think the opportunity is right. In an environment like we have now, where there's no inventory, there's really high interest rates compared to what it was 6 months ago and 12 months ago. It's just not the right environment. So I have to go elsewhere. I have to look for other opportunities. We've talked ad infinitum about that. So I've done that. But I haven't bought any value-add multifamily in a year and a half, 2 years, because there's just nothing to buy. A, it's just too expensive. B, and there are sellers today who are putting their product out are like, yeah, I want the price that I was going to get a year ago when interest rates, you can get money at 2.7% and people were overpaying through the nose for anything. Like, that's just not happening now. I mean, stuff's falling apart now. So if you're a seller, you got to get real. If you're a buyer, you got to get real. And that's why I'm waiting to get back in. There's no real river flowing with pipeline and value-add multifam deal flow.
And does this set you up for, whenever the next opportunity arises?
I think so.
Right,
I think by keeping cash on the sidelines and being ready to pounce and being very widely broadcasted out there, and I've got my relationships and my network and my pipeline, and I'm in it every day working it, like, I'm gonna get stuff. I'm gonna get opportunities.
Yeah,
I got a great one yesterday.
Yeah, oh really?
But it takes time to develop and build it.
Yeah,
and you gotta know when to pull the trigger and when to pounce. You gotta know when the price is right. Maybe it'll get a little lower in price if you wait another week or 2 or 4. Maybe you'll miss it if you wait another week or 2 or 4. You gotta know. You have to know your market. You have to know how to value assets, and you have to know what you're willing to pay for it. Another thing, I can't drive it home enough. You have to know. You gotta know everything. No guesswork, no thinking, no maybe, no potentially, no possibly. You have to know. So here's what I know. It's still too expensive for the most part, but it's starting to loosen up, and there's going to be a lot of pain coming up in the next probably 6-8 months when loans are expiring, interest rates are still high, and people are going to be forced to either refinance and buy down their loan balances or going to have to sell. It's going to happen. It just hasn't happened yet. And I know I'm going to be there to pick it up. Uncle Peter's going to be right there. Yes.
Get up and get out and get it done. That's the whole thing.
I'm going to get up and get out and go buy the shit a lot cheaper than I can right now. There's nothing to buy right now in multifam. I mean, people are. I saw a deal come across my desk from a broker this morning. They were asking a 6 cap based on future projections. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, I can get secured corporate credit that pays me 14, 15, 17%.
Yeah.
It's like almost as risk-free as you can get depending on the rating of the corporation issuing that credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But why am I going to put equity in a deal that makes 6%, not yet, but in a few years out? Probably today it makes 4%. Why would you do that? Some people do that. They have not taken the class from Uncle Peter about how to be a good investor.
Yeah, show up to class, guys. The other night we had a holiday party, which was fantastic. Thank you so much for hosting that. And you there told a story about becoming a lifeguard. And I wanted you to talk about that and how you set yourself up to win even when you don't necessarily win.
How did I set myself up to win? Thank you for paying me the compliment that I actually did something to, I'm 16 years old at this point, and I was a busboy. I was working the slop sink and the dirty trays, and I was a busboy for a couple of years. It sucked. It's like such a bad job. Cool location in my little happy place spot where I was spending summers with my family, and I needed a job. I had multiple jobs. This was one of them. I was a busboy, but I hated it. I heard that there was a party happening being thrown by a bunch of lifeguards, and the lifeguards where I was spending my summers, like they were the kings. They ran the whole island. I mean, socially, they were, it was like that was what you wanted to be, was a lifeguard. I was a decent swimmer, a decent athlete, so I was like, man, I would love to be a lifeguard. One of the guys at the party, I ended up going to the party. They're like, hey, you should come, you should try out. There's a tryout tomorrow. You gave me the address. I showed up. The next day I showed up, the guy's like, all right, you're going to go run a mile, swim a mile, run another mile back, and the first 3 people to cross the finish line, you guys got the job. Because they need people that can move fast.
Yeah.
You're like saving lives. Like you don't want a slow swimmer,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, man, I got to be top three. So on your marks, get set, go. I ran as fast as I could, like I was running away from the devil. I swam so fast, never faster in my life. Crossed the finish line, 4th place. By not that much, but like 4th place. So I wasn't the top 3, and I'm like, oh, shoot, like I'm not going to get the job. So the guy's like, all right, number 1, can you start tomorrow? He's like, yeah, I can start tomorrow. All right, you're hired. Number 2, can you start tomorrow? Yeah, I can start tomorrow. All right, you're hired. Number 3, can you start tomorrow? And number 3 is like, well, I don't know. I got to ask my mom and dad. We're moving next week, and I got to unpack, and then I got to go back to school and get my stuff. And so the guy was like, screw you, number 3. Number 4, he looks right at me. He says, number 4, can you start tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, I can start. So what did I do to set myself up for success? I said yes. I couldn't start tomorrow normally. I mean, I had to give no notice to my employer where I was the busboy, but I got over that because it was a way better situation for me. But usually I want to give notice and not be leaving my employer in a bind. And I did that time, but I had to because he was an awful person. And it was an awful job, and I was. But I got over that. I didn't give him any notice, but I just said yes. He said, "Can you start tomorrow?" I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I'll be there." So I got hired, really out of luck, because the number 3 guy couldn't start and was being a pain in the ass, but also because I just said yes. Like I didn't care. Like I didn't even ask what it paid. Like I didn't ask anything about like the hour. Like it didn't matter to me. Like I was being offered the job, so I just took it. I was thrilled. Like it couldn't have been better for me.
Yeah, what I love about this story is it synthesizes so many of the kind of mantras and like things that we talk about here of like get up and get out, get it done, and like yes I can, and like all these things of just because you didn't make it by the metric that you thought was how you won, there was all these other ways that you ended up winning.
I watched the whole thing unfold right before me. Number 1, can you start? Yes. Number 2, can you start? Yes. Number 3, well, you just know, like as soon as that starts happening and the guy starts like weaseling and retreating and you see everyone.
Details drive details. That's another example of that's an indication of maybe how he's going to be as an employee.
You just know that that's the opportunity. I knew that was the opportunity, and thank God I was in 4th place because he just went right down the line. 1, 2, 3, 4. He looked at me and I was like, yeah, I'll take it if this guy is flaking. So what wouldn't have worked is if I came in 12th. And, that wouldn't have been good enough for them because I came in 12th. But I came in 4th, and they kicked 3 out, and they made room for me, and I was forever impacted by that. It significantly changed the trajectory of my childhood, my social exposure, everything. It was great. But I didn't really do anything to set myself up for that other than work really hard to try and get in the top 3, which I failed. I got in the top 4. And really just I pounced when he said, number 4, can you start tomorrow? I said, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though, that because you say you did nothing, but I think you weren't conscious of it. But that's
I didn't come into it being like, all right, here's my plan. If
exactly,
number 3, I didn't know what was going to happen.
No, of course.
What was there? I mean, you've heard the story now. What do you think was within my control to do? I think a lot of it was luck, and a lot of it was the accumulation of a few small things together and timing. Timing is important. But I had to be able to swim and run, so that you can't fake.
Totally. Yeah.
And but had I hesitated, I think that's where it is.
Yeah, I think the default aggressive conversation. That's
default aggressive. Yeah. Had I hesitated, because we just saw what happened. Number 3, can you start tomorrow? Well, that hesitation, that split second hesitation, the guy just had no more patience for number 3 and went to number 4, which was me. Had I hesitated, he would have gone to number 5.
Because you said you had a reason. You could have technically said, oh, well, I got to give notice to my job. And
if I had said, I don't know, I have to get, if I had said that, he would have passed me right over.
Exactly. Yeah. So
for sure.
Yeah. So I think it seems a simple thing, but I think there's loads of people that don't do that and are.
Well, it's seizing the opportunity. You have to know when something's an opportunity, and you have to be prepared to do what it takes to take it down.
Well, you were a kid back then, so I want to talk about this tweet that you put out a few weeks ago that has been getting a lot of love on IG, and it's about raising your kids. Okay. You said, listen, don't screw this up. Your kids need 3 skills.
Yeah.
1, they need to outwork everyone.
Yes.
2, commitment to family and friends. Be loyal.
Yes.
And 3, don't be a complete and utter douchebag.
Don't.
If you can give them these things, they will do well.
It's true.
So how do you instill these qualities in yourself and in your children? What difference does it make in your life?
Well, let's start with the children first.
Let's do it, yeah.
You got to be a solid person. You got to have core values that matter, and you have to be able to impart that onto others, whether it's friends, family. In this case, we're talking about your kids. It's important to be able to bring your kids up right. We've all heard the phrase, they raise their kids right. Or if someone behaves properly, we say, your parents raised you right. And we know what that means. Sort of unofficially, we know what that means. But officially, it means something different for everybody. And it can mean something different from person to person and situation to situation. For me, it means imparting solid core values, the loyalty, the work ethic, knowing right from wrong, manners, eye contact, communication skills, knowing how to behave. All of these things add up. I think that's what makes you not a jerk. And conversely, you're a jerk when you just don't do those things. I work hard in teaching my daughter those kinds of things, and it's important for me to know that she hears that stuff repeatedly over and over from me, because she needs to know, and I think young people, kids, but she needs to have these things embedded in her blood cells, in her DNA. And the only way that happens is through repetition and good solid parenting, which hopefully I'm practicing. But, otherwise, if left alone, the kids will learn their behavior and their manners and their personality traits from their phones and from other poorly behaved people. You don't want that.
Unfortunately, it's, I think, more the norm than not. Forbes recently wrote a profile on billionaire Roy Carroll, and I was reading it, and it reminded me a lot of your own story. It was basically purchasing apartment buildings.
That's good.
Yeah, you purchased apartment buildings over time, later self-storage, never selling. That was a big theme of the article. One thing stood out to me, though. He said, it's hard to time some markets, but real estate is a slow mover, so you can see the train wreck coming. And so we always talk about, don't try and time the market. But in this way, he's kind of saying, well, maybe you can a little bit time the real estate market. And I was wondering what you thought about that observation, and what does it mean for you in
Nothing
context?
In real estate happens overnight. I believe that it's a slow mover. I believe that you can see train wrecks coming. And I also believe you can see the gold at the end of the rainbow coming, too. And recently, we've gone to heavy cash position. I just said we hadn't been buying much in the past year and a half, 2 years. So that leaves us with a lot of capital to deploy. I'm in no rush to deploy it because I see a train wreck coming. And I see that train wreck coming in the next 6-8 months and all through the end part of next year and into 2024. So I'm going to be prepared for it. So I can see that coming. I'm taking steps now to prepare for it. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be able to jump on the opportunities. I'm going to have the capital to jump on the opportunities. I'm going to be ready. Conversely, what we're in right now with this high rate environment and how fast it came upon us, I knew that this was going to come at some point. A couple of years ago, when all the stimulus was coming out and the interest rates were so low, really, really low in the twos, I didn't know how quickly it was going to come, and I didn't know exactly when, but I knew the pendulum was going to swing back. It always does. That's how markets work. And so I was preparing for this in certain regards. I got to say, I've been very shocked at how quickly interest rates have just put a chill on everything. And we saw that the Fed printed 7.1% CPI yesterday. So that was a much softer number than people were anticipating. And that's because the rates went up so dramatically, so quickly. So I did not predict the rate and velocity at which these rates went up and the impact that would have had. Usually we see that over larger swaths of time instead of 5 or 4 or 6 months, which is what this was this year, for the rates to get as high as they are. Usually it's like over the course of a year or a year and a half or 2 years, and it's a much less pronounced slope. And we got here quickly. No one saw that coming, but yeah, in real estate, nothing happens overnight. And if you have a macroeconomic and 30,000 feet above sea level perspective, you can see this kind of stuff. I think a lot about how everybody and their grandmother has gotten into real estate in some way, shape, and form over the past decade. And we talk a lot about the low barrier to entry to be able to do that. Some things require licenses, like to be a broker, you have to get a broker's license. But, to be a deal sponsor, you don't need any licensure. You just come in and raise capital. And when the markets are frothy, there's capital out there to raise. And so you get a lot of people that are doing deals and marketing deals and acquisitions and all this stuff. And I always wonder where they fit in the spectrum or the hierarchy of qualified, experienced, talented people. But, when I got started, I had to fight for every single deal, and I had to do stuff that no one was willing to do. I remember one time where our office is, that building that we own. It was owned by this very sweet old lady that inherited it from her husband, who purchased it, and he passed away, and she was the owner. Yeah. And she was in her 80s, and she didn't have all of her facilities. Yeah. Firing, and I had to go visit her. She wouldn't pick up the phone. I'm like, I gotta see this woman. I gotta tie this building up. I had to go knock on her door. And she yelled at me to go away, but I kept going back. And, but I built up a relationship with her. I started bringing her flowers. I started bringing her food. George, I had to start taking her to the drugstore and to go grocery shopping.
Oh, wow.
You got to picture this fragile, older woman. I mean, she's in her 80s, and she's this big and this skinny and like, and she looked at me as like a godsend. I was like a young, energetic person. I was willing to drive her places. I was willing to do anything if she would agree to sell me her building and sign a contract. I was ready to go. Like, I didn't care what it took.
You became her home health aide in order to get this building.
In a way, I did.
Yeah.
There was one time I told her I was going to come by. I came by, knocked on the door, couldn't find her. I'm walking around the property. I can't find her. And I see the basement door is open, and I go downstairs in the basement, and I'm yelling her name, and I hear someone, I hear something, so I walk. I've got a flashlight with me. It's dark. It's damp. And this is, make sure you bleep this part out if as necessary. But I find her down there. She's got her pants down around her ankles, and she's going to the bathroom on the slab foundation in the basement. And, this is one of many.
Right. Yeah.
But, I was there, and maybe that got us the bonding and the closeness that we needed, but she signed with me.
Wow. Yeah.
She signed the friggin' contract with me. But that's the kind of stuff I had to endure. And it's amazing sometimes what you have to go through when you know that you want a certain result and outcome, and you'll just do any, like, people thought I was crazy. They're like, don't go there. It's dangerous. Don't go there. It's like, have your lawyer call her. Like, I knew that if I had my lawyer call her, like, nothing was going to happen. Like, I couldn't even get this person on the phone. She doesn't leave her apartment. She's like a little wacky. Like, there was no lawyer that was going to be able to penetrate that iron curtain more than I was.
What about that building was so desirable for you at the time? Like, what made that?
It was big enough that I cared to get it, and it had a certain size and mass that was attractive, and it wasn't too big where I couldn't perform.
Have you come in contact with a lot of people recently who you feel like either do have that quality or don't have that quality that you're talking about in terms of being able to do anything?
I haven't come in contact with those people. Usually that's younger people. I mean, that's a younger person's hunt.
Yeah.
For me nowadays, I have my network, my pipeline, and I'm not chasing old people that are mentally compromised down in the basements of their building while they do their business in the basement. Like, I'm not doing that anymore, although I would if it was the right opportunity, I guess. But, usually I just have my network and my pipeline and my own staff and team that goes out and hunts for deals, and we get them a little bit more traditionally. But it's a young person's game. If you really want to compete, what's going to be your edge? For me, it was that I drove her to the drugstore, drove her to the grocery store, and watched her, go to the bathroom in the basement. Sorry to bring it up again, but I was the one willing to do all of that. And once I signed and once I closed, people were like, "Oh, you bought that building? We've been trying to get that building." So everybody comes out of the woodwork. They're like, "How did you get it, Siegel? We were trying." So, I got it because I did all that nasty stuff that you guys didn't want to do. Pretty much is how it went. And that's not even to talk about the kind of stuff that happens at the closing table. I mean, have you ever heard stories about what happens at the closing table? If you make it to the closing table.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's bananas.
Yeah, I have no experience at the closing table myself.
Ask me next week when we shoot.
Okay, cool.
And we'll get into it.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, thanks so much, Peter.
Thanks, George.
See you over at Q&A. All right, Peter, I got another Q&A for you. This one's from Renee Poplin.
All right, Renee.
And she says, I always seek to have a good relationship with my tenants.
Great.
But I've heard stories about lawsuits and accusations coming out of nowhere for other property owners. How do you protect yourself from misunderstandings when it comes to applications, background checks, and things like that?
Renee, follow the law. When it comes to applications, know your fair housing laws, know the rules and the regs, know how to process and review an applicant, know what information to ask for, and more importantly, know what information not to ask for. That's the first thing. You have to know fair housing. Period. End of discussion. After that, just operate your property like a good person. Like, communicate, be honest, be sincere, put things in writing to help be more clear with everybody. But you're not going to have real problems after that. Don't go into the apartment without consent if they're not giving you consent. Wait for mutually agreeable time. Make sure you have the right language in your leases to protect you. We've talked about requiring renters to have renter insurance. We've talked about having broad-based language in your leases regarding the uses that you're going to permit your tenants to undertake inside your real estate. If you're renting apartments, make sure that they're living in the apartment as a home and not using it as a hair salon or an art studio or a gym, because I've had all those experiences earlier when I started off, but I don't have them now because my leases say that and I know what to look for. Renee, make sure you follow your fair housing rules to the T. You have to be an expert on fair housing and what it says and what it doesn't say, and you have to operate accordingly. Have great, strong language in your leases so that there's a clear landlord-tenant relationship and the boundaries are set from the first day. And just operate honestly and sincerely and over-communicate until you're asked not to communicate so much. Then you can tone it down. But more communication is better than less communication, and being a great service provider with a smile is better than anything at all. And I wish you the best of luck.
I love it. All right. Good luck, Renee, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Renee.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a comment or review. You can follow us on TikTok and Twitter at SiegelCap, and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.